Howdy, everybody. Are you back from your holidays, Leonard?
It's the first time I'm using Zoom on my mobile phone.
Oh, okay.
So no, I'm not yet back. I'm in the hall of a hotel, so that's the only place where they have internet.
Oh, okay. Yes, I remember that one. Trying to find the signal. Yeah. Oh well, it's good you could make it. Yeah. It's kind of magical, this Zoom. We can be anywhere in the world just about.
Yeah, it seems kind of crazy.
I'm really pleased to see you, Kelly. Yeah. Hmm. So, if you don't want to say anything, just tell me. You don't have to,
Something to share, but it's well, it's sort of new and it's sort of not new really, and I'm not sure how much I want to go into it just yet, because I was watching one of the old Todd and Pernilla Feta inquiry groups, which I'm finding quite useful actually, because it kind of embeds, when the shit hits the fan, rather than just going into what do I do,
Yes.
bring it down into the body rather than just and somebody was on there talking about he'd realized that he'd been the scapegoat of the family really, and therefore he always thought that he was wrong, and all his subsequent relationships, he was always the one that was in the wrong. And I'd never quite seen my background quite like that. I think I touched on it. It wasn't completely unfamiliar, but it really brought it into focus that when I was young, really, all my childhood, I think, I was an only child, that all the problems were kind of put on me, and I became the problem, I think. I mean, it's all a story, but it does seem to equate to this feeling of not being okay. I've been thinking a lot about you saying, Vince, you're okay as you are, which I really struggle with, because it just doesn't feel like that most of the time. But I just realized that, I think probably I was a bit of a dumping ground, not in a really horrible way. It's a very unconscious kind of way. My parents weren't terrible. They did the best that they could. Nevertheless, being an only child and very close to my mother particularly, and, she had her issues, I was like a sponge really, I think. And I could talk about it forever, and I have done in therapy, but it definitely occurred to me that, possibly, any problems my parents were having, they were only human, got played out into me being cross with me if I was naughty, or, if I didn't toe the line exactly how they wanted me to. I was always pushed back between the acceptable tram lines. And I know I used to get very angry. I was very naughty, got punished a lot. I think just because I've always been a bit of a rebel, really. And, you know, I just wasn't prepared. Well, thank God I wasn't prepared to be completely squashed. Yeah, and God knows what I'd be like if I'd have given into it all. But you know, that's brought its own stuff with it. And then I realized, you know, I became even more of a rebel, you know, and I became a bit of a problem, bit of a, not in a big way, a bit of a black sheep in the family. I always felt that I was naughtier than all my cousins, you know. I mean, it since turned out I wasn't at all. But I've only learned that in the last few years. Yeah, so just that's a new realization, and I definitely felt a sense of relief when I'd spotted that. So I wrote it down and felt it, and I had a better night's sleep than I've had for quite a while, actually. So there was you know, an aha there for me that I was treated as the problem, and I've gone on to live my life believing that I'm a problem at some level. Which is probably why, yeah, one of the reasons why I don't feel good about myself. It's just a slightly different, you know, twist on what I already kind of knew, but that really, it's really made sense to me.
So what was the pivot point? Where, I mean, you'd heard it before, but somehow there was something different that you heard this time that caused you to shift a little.
I think it was just hearing it from somebody else, you know, somebody else telling their story in a very clear way,
Right.
that for some reason it popped in, and I'm much more receptive and open, I think, now. You know, I mean,
Yep.
I'm still incredibly armored, I'm very defended, but I think in these situations, you know, I'm learning that actually the more open you can be to possibilities,
Absolutely, yeah.
the more gold you get, really. And there's no point in being, you know, very defensive
Yep.
in
So
these kinds of groups.
one of the things that popped into my mind as you were talking, Lindy, was that, you know, I get a thing about repeating myself, but I mean, I do have to repeat again and again and again some things, and it's just because we've got to be in the right kind of receptive place to take something in. Otherwise, it just bounces off like water off a duck's back kind of thing. And one of the things that popped into my mind was that it's really hard to get across to people, and it's something that everybody needs to appreciate, and that is that it doesn't matter what actually happened. It's always how you relate to what you thought was happening, right? Or what you experienced was happening. And what you experienced, of course, was your interpretation of what was going on. So memory we always construct memory. Memory is not a picture being drawn out of the past anywhere. It's always put together every time we have a memory. It's a construct, and it'll vary all the time. We know that. You know, we know that memory rarely is it exactly as things were. It's always our interpretation. It's how we react to that and what we do. And it's such a common theme that every child interprets what's going on around him from his egocentric place, right? For a baby, the whole world is their experience, literally. And so if they are hungry, then it's a life and death situation. If they're cold, it's a life and death situation. If they get smacked, it's a life and death situation. You know, everything that happens to them is such a huge thing. because they can only see it from their own perspective, and their own perspective is naive and really limited. So if you're told that you're a naughty girl 3 times, it's like, well, it must be true. So does that affect the way you behave? Probably. It probably means if you identify as being a naughty girl, you're going to behave like a naughty girl. That's the way it
And
is.
I think as well, that was, it's a way of getting attention, if I felt,
That does happen too.
yeah.
But the thing is that what being naughty, seeing yourself as naughty, was very likely, and this is me making up stories, but it was very likely a preferable thing for you to feel to feeling what else was there, what was underneath that, right? Which would be I'm not worthy. Naughty is a lot easier to cope with than being unworthy, or being, as a kid, what would it be? It just being wrong, being not acceptable, whatever that is.
Certainly, yeah, and I certainly remember being spending a lot of time being really angry with my parents, and that was sort of interchanged with shame. I think, I was shamed quite a lot if I was naughty, and but I think anger, horrible as it was, I used that instead.
So
But yeah, I mean,
covers up for you, doesn't it?
these are all stories, but obviously what I'm trying to do is get to the the reason it's important for me is that a lot of the feelings that I have that then result in behaviors that probably don't do me a lot of good, for me. So it's like tracing back where that might have come from, remembering the story, then thinking, oh yeah, I can feel that, and then just being with the feeling and trying to let the story go as much as possible. Yeah. But I think sometimes the stories are quite important to identify, to identify what it is you're feeling, and maybe where it came from. I know not everything comes from something very definite, but for me, there's still a lot. It feels like there's still quite a lot of work to do on the things I do know about, things that I haven't welcomed and then dissolved, really.
Yes, as you get older, your defensive behavior changes. It gets more complex, more sophisticated. Right? So by the time you're a teenager, the original thing is gone, but that's still what everything's built on. And so that being that naughty girl, the ways that you might have expressed that would be much more sophisticated by the time you're a teenager than what they were when you're an adolescent, when you were an infant even. But when you're an infant, really the only way you can defend yourself is to withdraw from it, withdraw emotionally from it. And so when you discovered that being naughty actually got you some rewards, as well as got you away from feeling like you were unworthy. Now, if you can, and you don't need to be any more specific than that. I mean, those things will, or very likely will, reveal themselves, but they're not necessary. But to find the exact thing that happened and go back and resolve that is just a fairy story. The fact that this stuff started and then developed and changed and modified and morphed into whatever it did, it exists now. When it started is just when it started, and since then it's changed, but it's right there now.
It absolutely is, and that's why that was a particularly useful thing, because it did get me in touch with with really tricky feelings. And I definitely feel a bit slightly different today. So I mean, you know, I can't quantify it. And I know it's not about getting immediate results, but I just feel there's been, I don't feel it's been a you know, massive energy shift, but I do feel it's a bit of an aha that's
Yes.
just have a little difference somewhere,
It lets
which
you
is
in.
always such a relief, because I was feeling so shit yesterday.
Yeah. So just getting enough of the story to put it into context. I mean, your story that you saw was yourself as a child and the way your parents were and the way you were. That's enough. That's enough often for you to, how could I put it? Put into context. You bring an adult's perspective to the child's situation that you were remembering. And so it's like what you do is you're taking the present and visiting the past with it. And what you do is you bring that adult perspective to the whole thing. And it's like you suddenly realize that you weren't a bad kid. You're a kid who was responding to the circumstances that you were in. It's like you can forgive yourself as a young child.
Yeah, I'm definitely aware that my path, or, you know, the way I need to be working with all this, is to be an awful lot gentler with myself and give myself the extra parenting, you know, on the difficult bits that I didn't receive around all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to just slow down and be gentle and feel.
Well,
because I don't really know. I just don't know what else to do, really.
Yes, well, good. That's a good thing. You don't need to do anything, right? The best opportunity for you to work through this stuff is to take notice of what life offers you now. Life will constantly offer you ways to fix that up, because that's like the learning that we have as humans. We're always looking to get better, to feel better, to get healthier, whatever, regardless of what we do. I mean, we might seem to go in the opposite direction sometimes, but the underlying pull is always in that direction. And so accepting that if you do nothing, that is, if you don't have intentions and plans that you're looking to carry out, right? If you can just simply relax, and even that sounds like a doing, but you know, take it for what it is. Life will offer you opportunities, right? And the triggers that you get in today's life still rest on that same stuff that we just talked about. They still go right back to when you were an infant. I just see this again and again and again now. We develop ways of coping with those really unpleasant feelings that we had. And to simply realize that we didn't have any way of coping with those feelings back when we were young, when we were an infant. And the way we cope with them now is still resting on that foundation. So that's
yes, I'm very aware. I'm very aware that a lot of my patterns, which aren't helpful even now, you know, I can trace a lot of them back to when I was very, very young. You know, my defense mechanisms back in those days, you know, around rejection and the danger of loving people and all that, you know, I can trace so much of it back. And I don't want to go back into the story because I've delved into it loads and loads and loads, but it's helpful with some things if you do know where they come from. But it's how I deal with them now that's the important thing. Absolutely. Because those feelings are quite clearly still around.
Yeah. Well, they're not the same feelings. They're today's version of those feelings. But yeah. So just knowing that it came from before, and that what is now, what is here now, is is an end result, if you like, of that huge, complex set of everything that's ever happened to you. So being acceptance of what turns up is the best possibility of having a clear view of what's going on. The moment we react to what's going on, we lose sight of it, and we get into a response pattern that creates its own stories and takes us around in circles, so to speak. But by being equanimous, that's a really interesting word, equanimous. By being equanimous gives you the widest possible perspective to view what's going on. And then when you see life, that things that happen in life that you respond to as an opportunity to resolve some of this stuff, then you can do that. And how do you resolve it? Mostly by simply seeing it clearly. We don't have to do anything to resolve it, but once we see it clearly, it will often resolve. And often that will then reveal some details to you as well, because you haven't got the defenses are not up and going. Yeah. So that shift that you experienced, that little shift you described there, if you can pull in the feeling that happened when you went, when that thing happened, when that little realization or that little shift or whatever it was that that you're saying was only little, that feeling, if you can grab a hold of that feeling, if you can remember what that feeling was, that's a place to reside. That's a place that you can rest in, and great things can happen there. That's a little tricky to do that, but
I think it wasn't a sudden like that. It was more of a, I wonder. Actually that makes it was more of a gradual thing. I think and as I say, I felt a sense of just relief, really, that I'd spotted it and written it down. Then I slept better, and this morning, in the mornings, I tend even if I wake up feeling okay, within about an hour I'm aware that this quite often this very, very gradually this anxiety creeps up. But this morning it definitely did, but it had a slightly different feel. It's always here in my solar plexus, and it kind of builds and builds and builds and builds. And I try and sit with it, and it's been a lot better since I've been sitting with it, and it's been gentle. But this morning it definitely had a slightly different feel, which I can't even put into words, but there was definitely a little bit of excitement there.
okay, yes.
And it was
Yeah.
and it was kind of different. So that's why I know that's why it seems that probably, I have uncovered a little, useful little clue that I can just keep sitting with and working with.
Yep. See it as a little thread that you can just keep tugging at, keeping it alive and getting closer and closer to the, whatever's at the other end of it. Yeah.
I don't think there's an awful lot that comes up that I'm not aware of the root of it. As I say, I had years and years of therapy. But now it's letting it come up and being with it in a different way. I think that's my
okay, here's what comes up then for me in a bit big, and that is that it's so seductive to get lost in the stories. Right? And part of the seduction is that if you get into the story, you'll discover what the meaning is. You'll discover whatever, and it'll fix something. Right? So there's stories on stories there. There's these stories about what will happen if you get into the story, but we get lost in those stories, And it's not about the story itself. It's not about what happened to you. It's about
I know.
your relationship to that. That's where your response comes from.
And
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize that now, certainly, as a child, I reacted to what I thought was happening,
Yes.
whether that was what was happening or not. And, I'm aware today I've still been reacting to how, to the story, where actually that's probably why it's important in some ways for me to go back and see, well, maybe it wasn't quite as I thought, but it doesn't really matter. It's the feelings that are important. And as
Yeah.
long as
Yeah.
as long as I'm with those, that's the important thing. I don't want to go back into stories. Like I said, I've done it too much, possibly.
So always just kind of when the stories turn up, just push them sideways so that you're looking at them not face on, but you're looking at them from the side. And as a result, you're not in the story. You're seeing that a story exists, right? And by not being in it, gives you a chance to actually see it in a way that you can't when you're in it. If you're lost in it, you're just carried away by the whole content of what's going on. But when you can just move it to the side and look at it that way, all of a sudden you can see you're not. This is a hard one with words. It's like you can see what it's about objectively. It's not affecting you to see what it is about. It's like you're watching a movie or reading a book or something, but instead of being lost in it, you're going, oh, this is a bit boring or whatever. You're having a different reaction to it. You're not getting carried away by it. That relationship to it. There's got to be a better way to put that. That how we feel about it. That is it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I haven't been hugely well this week, so a bit unspecific really, but I was feeling, as I say, I was feeling quite shit yesterday really, and I was watching stuff. I was like, oh, it's a load of rubbish. What am I going to do? Whatever. And then suddenly this little pearl came up and it's completely changed. I'm not feeling great today, but it's like, okay, just be quiet, be gentle, and just keep going. But it's funny how, when I just think, oh God, something comes up and pulls me back again.
Yeah,
Quite amazing when you let it happen, isn't it?
absolutely, for sure. Yeah, not interfering with it. That's that big message. That's it. Yeah, it's really good to be able to see it clearly. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad I shared that. It felt of the moment, really, pretty much. So thank you.
And it's hopeful. That's a really big thing about it. It's hopeful. It gives you something that, and other people hearing it will go, oh yeah, maybe for me too. You never know. Yeah. We so often don't notice the good things. We notice the bad things, but we can miss the good things really easy, and especially if they're little. And so noticing them can change the mood quite a bit. Yeah. Yeah. How are you going, Kelly?
Hi, Vince. All right. Yeah, it's been a weird week. So the week before, I felt like I had a lot of presence and space. This week, it seems to be. I've seen a pattern that I do. When things get good, I don't know. I don't know what it is. But I get bored or think I'm not worthy of feeling happy or peaceful, and I self-sabotage myself. I'll totally come out of presence. I'll use things to get on like the excitement loop.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's anything to do with I am an ex-alcoholic. So it seems to be that pattern. I can pin it back to childhood. I did have I know it's only stories, quite a turbulent childhood. And I think for me, it was quite safe for me to be in my head, you know, because, you know, and shove feelings down and shove feelings down. And I think what happens is I get to a certain level of peacefulness, and then I'll maybe feel something uncomfortable that it just wants to be felt, and then I use excitement to avoid.
Yep.
And that's been the pattern all the way. I mean, bless my good friend, but literally I'm like a wild horse. And I go off, you know, I've done shamanic drumming, lucid dreaming, you know, I've done all sorts just to like feed, they're like new addictions for me. And I really want to break this cycle, because I know there's a lot of suffering in it. And it literally, when I get on the cycle, it's like a frenzy, and I'm going up and up and up, and then I drop. And then instead of sat with all them uncomfortable feelings, I'm scared, basically. I think I'm scared to really sit with them. Scared to really, and I kind of like press the, as I call it, excuse my language, the fuck it button. And that's when the self-sabotaging will come in. And it's just continuously on that loop.
Yep. Yeah, I get it. So you did. I used to have a superstition many years ago, and it was like, if things are going well, how long before the shit thing comes along? It's going to have to happen, you know. So things can't keep going well. The opposite has got to turn up because they're going well. That was the superstitious part. Yeah. Is it like that for you?
Honestly, I think sometimes it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. I think maybe for me, you know, being in maybe a bit of self-pity, or being like, you know, victim or in doubt, yeah, they don't make me happy, but I know what they are.
Yeah.
And there's a comfortableness with me knowing things.
Yep.
You know.
And can you see that the devil that you know is really literally what's going on, because it's the devil you don't know that you're accepting the devil you do know as a way of keeping away from. Well, did you get that? Yeah. So the devil you know, no matter how shitty that devil is, its job is to keep you away from the devil you don't know, because the devil you don't know is really, really possibly catastrophically bad. It never turns out to be that bad, but it feels like it is. But we don't even get to feel it because we're in the devil we know feelings. So they keep us pretty busy, keep us away from feeling, getting close to that devil we don't know.
Yeah, I've had some beautiful openings, and that's probably what's kept me, you know, kept me here basically, and kept me, you know, keeping coming back, you know, to the moment. But then at the same time, there's a level of defiance. It's like, no, I'm not going to do this. Let's suffer for a bit, and then when I've had enough of suffering, and then I'll come all in again.
Yeah. So maybe it's more the other way around for you than what I described about when things are going good. We've got to sabotage it before life makes it really bad. We'll do it ourselves, but it's not that way around for you. It's the other way around. And what did you say a moment ago about that? I lost it.
Do you know, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? Yeah. It's like you can reward yourself after a lot of bad shit's going on. You can allow yourself to feel good for a while.
Yeah, I think I just get sick of the suffering and like snap myself out of it, because it just seems to go down and down and down and down, you know, like into a black hole, and then I like snap myself out of it, and then and then it seems to kind of go up, and I get caught up. I get a bit cocky, I suppose. There's a bit of arrogance in there, and thinking I know best.
Do you get a bit high on it?
Yeah, I do.
So it's a kind of a manic depressive kind of cycle that you go through, and then down, and then up, and then down, and up, and then down. Eh? Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly that's the way it's manifested for me, for sure. It hasn't gone completely into bipolar, but very much something like a bit like something called cyclothymia, which is, you know, it's not the full whammy, but it's and then it goes both ways. I think when you've got emotional dysregulation, you know, what you were saying, or maybe it's the other way. I think both are true, because I really you know, the way what I was talking about earlier has manifested itself for me has definitely been, I just can hear what you're saying, Kelly, and I'm just thinking that's such a mirror for me.
Me too. I'm always saying to Kelly and my other friends, I'm sure I'm on the bipolar spectrum. That cycling that you're talking about, or manic depression, I think that's the old-fashioned word for bipolar, actually. So yeah, really, well, Kelly knows I resonate with that. So I just want to say that too.
Thanks, Anne.
It's interesting in that everybody does that kind of stuff to one degree or another. Maybe not a very much, and maybe a huge amount, but pretty well everybody kind of goes through that cycle of things. And what we're about, I guess, is leveling that off a bit, so that we don't go in either direction to extremes. But then that's not true either. You know, boy, I can get really high and feel quite manic.
I think sometimes when it levels off a bit, because I have recognized that I've had times where that's leveled off a bit, but then it feels, because it's new, it feels like something's missing.
Yeah. That's,
you know, when you change your behavior, sometimes, you know, you can kind of see at one level that, well, you know, this could be quite good, because actually this is, you know, something I've been aiming at, but actually it feels a bit empty, because it's, oh God, what do I do now? You know, and then that kind of turns into boredom and distraction, and yeah.
That's exactly it. The boredom is a big one for me, and restlessness. It's like I get to, like, you know, a couple of weeks of peacefulness and thinking, and then it's like, well, I'm bored here. Or, you know, it's like I'm addicted to the drama and the suffering.
Yeah, and you it might be accurate to describe it that way, but you know, boredom is not what we think it is. It's where we think of boredom as like, oh, we've got nothing to do, you know. But then if people offer you things to do, you go, no, I don't want to do that. No. So it's like, yeah, it's a self-induced thing in boredom. It's actually very active. What goes on in boredom is very, very active, and it is very definitely a distraction away from, and one of the reasons why it propels you into activity is because when you're bored, or just before you get bored, you're getting very close to something, and this is your body's way of saving you from getting in touch with that you don't want to get in touch with. So the boredom comes on, and then that incites you to do something. You know, so then you're going to get up and you're going to do something. So that's another distraction. So it just seems like the boredom comes from a nothing place, but it's in fact the opposite. Bit of a trick. Yeah.
Any advice? Because I kind of want to break this this pattern, and I do recognise it as a pattern.
Yeah.
And I think what under the border, it's fear of letting things up. I think that's what it is. Fear. I don't know if it's going to consume me, or you know, I don't know what it is, but there just feels something there that will just consume me.
That's right. And that is the base fear. That is what keeps you away from finding out what's going on, what all of this stuff rests on, what all of this stuff comes out of something back there that you don't want to let the cat out of the bag, or the genie out of the bottle, or open the Pandora's box, because that's what it feels like. It feels like if you go there, you'll never recover from that. It's a matter of survival. So all this other behavior is just a way of keeping away from that. But there's not much point in me telling you that when you get to see that, what it really is, if you get to see it clearly, you'd be blown away by how trivial it is. It just seemed like it was life and death at the time, and it still has the feeling that it's life and death. But what it actually is, as an adult, you'll be able to see that what it actually is was all a misunderstanding. It was all taking something to be something different to what it really was. But that's something you've got to discover. There's no point in me telling you. So discovering that is really what we're about. And what we're about is to get skillful at reading the messages that life shows us all the time. And so whatever we respond to, or rather react, whatever we react to with an instant emotional reaction, that's a doorway. Now we'll often not use that doorway because it seems pretty scary what's in the other side, but we never actually feel the scariness of it. We keep away from that, so we don't realize how scary it is. So it's once we start getting closer to it, once we open the door and walk through and start having a look at it, that's when it gets really scary. That's like a horror movie, and you can feel the music building up, you know, getting louder and louder and quicker as you get closer and closer to the monster. But that's how it feels. You know, it might be a fairy story, but it feels pretty real. And it is real, of course. It is what we respond to. Now, to say you want to do something to fix it, you are doing it. Right? You don't have to do anything different to what you're doing now. You're doing it. You're doing it by being here. You're doing it by talking about it. You're doing it by thinking about it, right? That's not a really good way to do it, but it's doing it. So what we need to do is develop our skill at doing it. Right? And the really tricky part about that skill is that it seems like it's not going to be enough. We want to be more active. We want to be proactive. We want to make it happen. You know, we want to control the issue. And of course, these are all delusions. We don't have control over what happens. Just seems like we do, but we don't actually. So when we get that message, all of a sudden we can stop and we can go, what's happening? What am I feeling? What are these thoughts trying to tell me, or trying to keep me from seeing, or whatever? What's going on? That's where we develop the skill, and we need to stop to do that. And the first thing, I mean, you might have heard me say, all thoughts are bullshit. You know, that's not true, but it's a good place to start, right? Well, first we have to disengage from these phenomenal stories that the mind keeps telling us, that keeps seducing us away from what's going on with these stories. And the mind just makes them up. You know, as quick as in less than a millisecond, the mind can create a whole book full of stories. It's just amazing how wonderful it is at doing that. And it's only after we stop getting lost in what the mind creates that we can start to take thoughts more seriously. Not seriously. They'll become more useful after they stop being just a defense for us. And that thing that we were talking about called the self, the ego, that's just body armor. That's just a way of defending. That's all about, that's its whole job, is defending. But we don't want to stop defending. We don't want to interfere with it. We want to recognize when it jumps up and starts to do something, it's defending us. What's it defending against? Where does it feel a threat? And that's when we can start to get into the body a little bit, just to quieten down those thoughts, just to say, okay, I'm feeling, that was a protective kind of thing that went on. Where am I feeling threatened? Is it here? Is it in the chest? Is it in the stomach? Is it in the head? Where am I feeling it? And just by doing that, just by looking in the body, right, we disengage from that storytelling scenario a little bit. So that's just a step one technique. We've got to stop believing our stories uncritically and recognize that pretty well everything that our mind does at the moment is just trying to keep us away from what's really going on. And what's really going on is our experience, of course. So we can have experiences that we're not even aware that we're having, because we're up in the head thinking about it, and the awareness, the experience of what's actually going on, it comes and goes without us even realizing that it did. But when we're not involved in the head so much, we start to get an idea. Look, yes, I'm feeling this. And we don't have to worry about why. We don't have to give it a real reason for being there. We just go, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. So let's look at that feeling. What's the sensation? What are the stories about it? That's, as soon as I label that sensation, if I call it anxiety, it's a way of me not looking at it because I've given it a label, which is just like putting up a shield again, another bit of armor. But if I look at, right, because as soon as I say it's anxiety, I get sucked in straight away. I get sucked into the idea that, what am I anxious about? Right? And we're looking out there for something that's going on, right? But if we can go, what is the sensation that I'm calling anxiety? And as I get to look at the sensation where it is, I also get to see the stories that start falling off about it. Oh, okay, I was responding to something else that went on. And that gives us an option to then simply look at it. So without opinion, without judgment, just look at it. And that, the more clearly we can see it, the more in context it is, the more we can put it into context and give it a, take away the original meaning, the meaning that we developed when we were too young to know what we were doing when we said that, you know. So being hungry, of course, feels like it's a life and death thing for a baby, but being hungry for an adult, you go, well, that's just hunger. I'll have something to eat later. So that connection, that's a tricky one. That connection where you go, that baby that felt it was a life and death thing, that's still in me. And it's not as a baby anymore, but the response, the experience is there, still there, and I'm still responding to it like I would have if I was an infant. But somehow, at the same time as recognizing that that's maybe what's going on, there's this recognition that, well, of course, a baby's going to think it's life and death if it's hungry, but I know it's not. And so in a way, you can reparent the baby in you. You can tell it, you know, yeah, you would have got fed in a few minutes anyway. You know?
I think slowly and gently, in as much as we have a choice, you know, and it's something that's, you know, it's been hard learning for me, but when I can manage to slow down and be gentle with it.
Yes, yeah, that's big. Yeah,
I think that's really important. You know, if you've had a lot of emotional dysregulation, which I have, you know, there's no, you can't sort it out with a sledgehammer. You know, it's got to be just little bits, very, very gradually, learning to love yourself. It's a bit of a cliche, but you know, for me, I know, I'm pretty sure that is a really important thing.
Yeah, being gentle, thank you for that. That's I tend to be a bit abrupt, I think. And so being gentle is a good reminder that you know how much you can cope with. And if it's very little, that's okay. If it's a lot, that's okay. It doesn't matter how much. But you don't want to dive headfirst into a pit of monsters. You know, what you want to do is just go to the edge and kind of peer over and back off if it gets a bit scary, and then come forward again, and right, do it only as much as you can. Right. So one of the things when we do some of the feta work is we use a sentence that gets a reaction in us. You know, we might use a sentence like, my mother never thought I was good enough. Right. And if you get a little bit of juice flowing with that, if you get just a little bit of an emotional response to that, that's a good sentence. Right? But if you get flooded with emotion, it's too much. You got to back off and say something a little bit different, turn it around. So you're going to get a sentence that's going to give you just enough juice to find something to work with, but not too much, not too little, not too much. It's the
It's like a balance.
Goldilocks thing, yeah. And of course, you've got to watch these stories that come along, like, you know, oh, it'll never change. You know, I've been going at it for years and it hasn't worked and it's never going to change. And, you know, they're just ways of keeping you away from what's really going on.
Yeah.
But they can be productive for sure. Yeah.
Very seductive. I can dive straight into them before I even know it.
Yeah. You know, the only, you know, here's another one of my generalizations, you know. I was going to say the only way people fail at this is when they give up. Otherwise, you keep at it, it'll happen for sure. And then again, it's not like something you do. It's just something that it carries you along, doesn't it? You know, sometimes these things, it just says, well, I'm here and I'm not going away, so you might as well get into it. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Vince. That was really sound
Yeah.
advice, and thank you for what you said, Linda. The self-love I can get. I wouldn't say I'm there with that yet. I've got compassion for myself now, so you know it's getting better.
That's a big one. Yeah. And it's a really weird one, but think about forgiving yourself. And I know your first thing is going to come up is going to be, what have I got to forgive myself about? You know? But just play with it, contemplate it, and work out. You know, think about what is forgiveness. You know, what happens when you forgive something. You know, just muse on that for a little bit, because it's a really, really, really interesting one, and so close to home for most of us, because you know, it starts off, you think, oh, well, no, you know, I was pretty much a victim as a child. And it's the other people I've got to forgive, not myself. Right? But then after a while, as a victim, of course, you start to do things. You start to play the victim. And that's kind of where you can start looking at forgiving yourself from doing things like that. Yeah. It's a tricky one, but well worth contemplating. What is forgiveness? It's definitely a letting go of something, isn't it?
Forgiveness for me feels like a healing.
Yeah. Healing comes from forgiveness, from the forgiver as well as the forgiven. Yeah. Yeah. How much is it for the forgiver? We always see it as for the forgiven, but for the giver, it's a big thing too.
You're letting go of all the stories that come with it.
Yeah. And that's not to deny them or suppress them. That's to allow them to rise to the surface and come out. Go of their own accord, you know. Yeah. How have you been, Ian?
Yeah, I was just going to share, actually. I was just making sure Kelly had said everything she wanted to. I really got a lot from her share because we're quite similar. Oh, did you say Anne or Anna? Sorry.
I said, you.
All right. I just noticed there was an Anna there. You know, and I do have a lot of similar things, so it was quite informative for me as well. But one thing I realised as Kelly was speaking was the impatience that I have. It's like if something comes up, I want it settled now. I don't want to have to go through it 20 million times. you know, and there's a panic with that sometimes. I'm very impatient, and the boredom. Is boredom an emotion? That question just came up of like, yeah, we talk about boredom, but I'm kind of looking at what emotions are sometimes, because it puts a different take on it if you think of it as an emotion, because then it's something to look at, isn't it? It's like, oh, I've got an emotion coming up and it's called boredom.
Yeah.
Josh said once, boredom is not fully immersion in what is happening right now. It's like avoiding to feel what is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what he said. And that's really kind of resonated, because I remember that like a few months ago and just sit here.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Thank you, Anna. Yeah. It's an avoidance, isn't it? Yeah.
So
But this morning, sorry, Vince.
I was just going to say an important thing is to recognize the diversion that labels are. So you stonked me when you asked the question, is it an emotion? I went, oh, I don't know. It's an emotion. But then it doesn't matter. Right. So there's value in investigation, in recognizing that a feeling is a sensation with stories attached to it. And I don't know whether it's just a matter of intensity, whether you can say a feeling is just a mini emotion, or is it just a bigger of the same thing? Yeah. But once again, the moment that you put a label on it, like an emotion or a feeling, it stops you from investigating what's actually happening.
Yeah, that's
relating to the concept.
Yeah, I like that, because I've always wondered as well, what's the emotion, what's the feeling? So yeah, but anyway, what I was going to share is I had one of my, I think I've spoken to you about this brief, maybe, yeah, anyway, I had one of my, what I call muddy, fuzzy mornings. And I think it resulted from last night because I overate. And I can't overeat because I have stomach problems. So I woke up with a bad stomach and I woke up very early. So I knew I was tired. And I did some body work and a bit of meditation. And then whether the body work brought this up, I don't know, and the meditation, but then I went into this kind of, I can't label it because I can't even describe it, but I have labeled it sort of fuzzy muddy because I don't know how to describe it, but.
That sounds more like a description than a label to me.
Yeah, it's a description, yeah. So, and I don't know even how to talk about it, but I'm just trying to talk about it because I know talking about things is good. But, you know, when I try and use anything I've learned from Panilla, and I always forget to laugh, by the way, you told me to laugh when I come out of it, Vince. I just came on the meeting and thought, oh, I forgot to laugh because I did come out of it.
But you're laughing now, see?
Yeah, exactly.
I just had a laugh, okay?
Thank you. Yeah. So when I'm in it, you know, I can say, so I'm having loads of thoughts which are all over the place. And I can think, oh, so what's the feeling? What's the feeling? But I can't find the feeling. And if anything, I'd say the feeling's in my head because that's where all the fuzzy muddiness is. And there doesn't seem to be any success with it within the fetters or the, you know, and it goes to extremes like maybe you should just leave this non-duality alone now. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you need proper therapy and things like that. And then So I'm kind of likening it to a black thundery day, like the weather, because when it lifts, which it did, it's like black to white. The clouds have just lifted, but I don't know how they've lifted. It's like I don't know if I'm learning anything from it. All I know is I don't want it. So that, and it just could be resistance. It's just that I don't know what it is, and I think that not knowing and feeling stuck in it and not knowing what it is. And maybe that's an old childhood emotion coming up. I don't know. You know, being stuck, not knowing what it is. But anyway, that's what happened this morning. And then I came out and I feel very calm and good, and just these blips of chaos and just horrible, really. They're really horrible at the time. Really.
Yeah. So what will take you back into that horrible place? What happens when you go back into it? You're out here and it's daylight and the sun's shining and you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
That'll go on
Yeah.
for a while, a little while, a long while. How long will that go on for?
It's difficult to gauge time. I have a problem sometimes with how long and how many days and
Yeah.
what did you...
Okay, you
So-
don't have to be accurate, just a little, a medium, a long.
I think I'm out of it quite a long time. I'm in the daylight quite a long time with blips into the darkness. I don't know when they'll come or what triggers them. There doesn't seem like this morning, nothing happened. Except that I woke up with a bit of stomach pain, which is quite normal for me. And maybe I was overtired. Yeah, actually, tired and pain can blip me into them, particularly tiredness. Yeah, good question. I was very tired. I wanted to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. So yeah, tiredness is a big one for me.
Yeah. When we're tired or sick, we just get triggered so much easier, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I've got chronic fatigue, but I kind of have denial of it somehow. I just don't want it, so I just pretend I haven't. Which is a bit weird, isn't it? But I'm not convinced.
No, I'm with you. You know what the doctor says it is. He wants to find a label because he knows about treating labels. So if he's got a label, he knows what symptoms and what drugs to use, etc., etc. So they're often a little bit too hurried to put a label on you. But then when they do put a label on you, it dehumanizes you to a degree. You know, it's not relating to what's actually goes on for you. Right? But then you start to look how your symptoms fit into that label, and you can get sucked in also to trying to treat the label. Well, let's look.
I think I've done that. I think it's worked both ways for me. You know, that I've labelled myself disabled and all sorts of things, and I've come out of that a little bit. But also, it's helped me because it really helped me to slow down and be patient with myself and pace myself. Things like that, which I never knew. I was always in overdrive, or very driven, very overdrive. So in a way, it's given me quite a lot, having that, to know what it is.
Right.
And myself forgiveness for not doing. It's done that for me. But yeah, I have to keep a balance on that. It's quite a weird thing to have, because it's not like you've got one leg missing, you can't see it.
Yeah.
So you don't, you know, your mind can say you've been lazy when really you can't do anything. It's just a weird thing. But yeah, that is one of my triggers, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well, you just
maybe
came up
it
with
is.
some. You just came up with some good things that can happen when you get a label.
Yeah.
So it's important then after you get those good things out of it, that okay, it makes a bit more sense. It describes, right, and it tells me that I'm not bad, I'm sick, is one of the main stories that comes out of that label, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. When I allow myself that, because the rest of the time it's I'm bad and I'm lazy. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, that's a big one for me. The lazy in particular, that's what my old man used to tell me all the time. I was lazy, and I was lazy. In if you look at it from that perspective, but if you look at it from another perspective, it wasn't that I was lazy. It was that I had all my energy was tied up in something else, and it was tied up in a survival thing. Really, I was tied up trying to feel okay.
That's really true. Yeah.
But yet the world puts a label of laziness on it, and then if we believe that for a moment, we go, oh well, that's bad, and then we're on another self-deprecating trip about well, we shouldn't be that way, and so then we will put effort into trying not to be lazy. But it doesn't matter how much effort we put into it, we just use up more energy, and it's even harder to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a circular thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's remembering, you just sort of sparks me there, because it's remembering that I am doing a lot, because I'm working on myself or my non-self. I'm working on through something, and that's work. Sometimes listening to teachings, it can be work.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're
Things like
concentrating, that uses a lot of energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have to concentrate a lot. Yeah, so it's quite a good one. So I don't know whether it's just something that's going to come with tiredness, this morning thing that I had today, or whenever I get it in winter, and an acceptance with it. I don't know, but it's the thoughts, really. It's the thoughts that are just going crazy in it.
I frequently wake up feeling like I haven't had enough sleep, because I I go to bed too late because I'm not tired, and then I have to get up when I'm still tired. So but anyway, what I was going to tell you, one of the tricks that I found is it's got to do with light, and one of the tricks was, I find that when I wake up in the morning, this is going to sound crazy, but I find that I can open one eye, my left eye, a lot easier than I can open my right eye. My right eye doesn't want to open, but my left eye, I can do that. And what I do is I roll over and I face the window and I open my left eye, and for a moment, it might only be for like a few seconds, and then it'll shut again, and then I'll open it again. And it's like I'm intentionally opening it to allow the light to get in and activate my brain. Right.
That's a really good point now, because I've just remembered that I'd started sitting in front, because I decided to get a light box in winter, because we have very long dark winters here, and I'm going to get a light box next year. So I decided to start sitting at the window, and that did help. And then this morning when it was all going on, I had my eyes closed, so it could be as simple as go and sit near the window and keep your eyes on the light, you know,
Yep.
to bring, because it does feel this fuzzy muddiness. It does feel like I'm awake, but I'm asleep.
Hmm.
It feels like I'm dreaming, but I'm awake almost.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, my head's still working things out and dreaming crazy thoughts, but I'm awake. So yeah, I think
It's interesting, that one, because we don't, you know, we never know when we go to sleep. You know, we can look back and say, oh, well, I must have gone to sleep at that time, but nobody experiences falling asleep. Isn't that interesting? I found that's absolutely amazing. Nobody experiences going off to sleep. Well, at least consciously. You know, they don't. You know, like you're awake and the next thing you're waking up. Right.
yeah.
But when
You don't mean, sometimes people feel that drowsiness of going into sleep, don't they? But
sure,
they don't,
but you never know the exact moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
the exact moment. Yeah, yeah.
Now, when you're waking up, it's the same thing. You know, there's not really a point where you go from being asleep to being awake. You kind of slowly come into being awake. There's a time, and it's a really interesting time. If the thought arises for you to watch what happens as you start waking up, that's an amazing trip. There's lots of things, and one of the things that you do is you recreate yourself in that waking up period, right? The stories start getting more and more active, and you know, you remember things that you were going to do or that need doing, or you might be focused more immediately on just getting out of bed and getting dressed. But there's these, and part of what you do is you rebuild a self.
Yeah.
As you're waking up. So watching that, if you get the opportunity to, is really interesting. Good stuff.
Well, I was just saying to my friend not so long ago that I don't really have that falling asleep. I'm more, or the slow falling asleep or slow falling awake anymore. It's like I'm asleep and then I'm awake, but I don't have the
Right. The transition is not so obvious.
Yeah. Occasionally, I do think you recreate yourself, because occasionally I've woken up and I've got no pain, and then all of a sudden I've got pain, as if I've recreated it. Do you understand what I mean? I've woken up in no self, and then the selves come back with the pain.
Yep. Yeah.
That's how it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah,
you know, all of a sudden,
amazing.
the self comes online, and it comes with all its baggage.
Yeah,
you see.
absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like a computer, you know, the computer's woken up and the baggage is there. And before that, I've woken up and thought, wow, this is amazing. Then a little while later, it's like, it all comes back online.
Yeah.
Or not, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I just want a solution for these times. It's like I want them to stop. I want to get out of them, because there's so much doubt in it, self-doubt. There's loads of self-doubt tied up in it. And
that's what I was mentioning before. That's a trap. I do fully understand that this is not pleasant and you want it to end. But chasing that is exactly the wrong direction. Chasing it, looking for an end to it, is what's going to perpetuate it. And the paradox is that accepting it and not trying to end it is how it will end. It's totally paradoxical, but that's my experience. That's what goes on. You chase it, all you do is make it stronger. You decide, I've got to do something about it. You can even see do, you know, you're gonna put a bit of flow into it or something, you know. Right? That just makes it stronger. right?
Well,
And
that's just bringing seeking back in, and the seeking is chasing a carrot on a stick, isn't it?
absolutely. And the stick is in the future. The other
Yeah.
end of the stick is always in the future. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, I have noticed when I'm coming out of it, and it happened today and it happened the other day as well. I want a solution. I want a reason. I want to be told what to do. So I'm seeking in teachings, and I was there looking through, you know, who could tell me about self-doubt and this and that. And then I just thought, no, just put it down and just enjoy the calm. Now it's here, rather than going in.
brilliant.
Yeah, trying to analyze what it was so that I can make it go away next time, or understand it so that it doesn't come back.
So has that
yeah.
happened to you before?
Pardon?
Has that happened to you before, or was that the first time that's happened?
It just happened quite clearly the other day. I listened to a teaching, and they mentioned some of the stuff, and then I went into that, and I had to know, and it just started a bit of seeking up, and I noticed that I wanted to know the depth of it, and I wanted to know all about it and the depth of it and everything like that. And it was that drive to seek, but not a comfortable one. And I thought, no, just leave it alone.
Yeah. So that thought there, that moment when you said, no, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Has that happened before?
Yeah, that was the other time that it happened before. It happened this morning, and then it happened a few days ago. And it's quite a relief to be able to just stop.
Right. So both times then you're able to say, don't chase it. Just let it go.
Yeah, just stop.
Right.
You don't look at those teachings.
Yeah. Can you appreciate how huge that is? What a absolutely big thing it is to be able to do that, for that thought to arise and for that happening to occur is just momentous. It is just such a big thing. Do you appreciate how big it is? It's
it did feel like, particularly the first time, it felt like a big relief, quite a surprise, like, oh, I usually would go for hours seeking into that one. So yeah, and then this morning it was quite a relief as well, not as powerful, but yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, because I know. Yeah, definitely when I can stop myself going on those patterns, because I can do the same with shopping. Like looking for a certain top or something, I'm like manically looking, and I know, and it feels like I can't stop, and I really want to stop. So they're seeking it. Do you understand what I mean? It's a bit, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So
it's just getting used to knowing the feeling of seeking, because it doesn't happen a lot, and only in certain things like clothes and coming out of or being in depression, where I'm trying to find someone to tell me what to do or solve what's going on. Yeah. So it's getting to know the feeling. Oh, this is seeking. It's not going to give me a result. I'm just going to be chasing my tail for 3-6 hours and then feel exhausted with it, and lost the calmness of this moment.
And so when that happens, you can relax into the present. Is that what happens? Yes.
Yeah.
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 Okay,
absolutely.
And that's the skill I was talking about earlier. That if doing that is what will allow you to get in touch with what is actually going on. So that's one diversion that you've basically conquered. It conquered is not the right word, but it's no longer in play, that diversion, right? It might still come up, but you will recognize it for what it is, a diversion, and you'll come back to go, oh, here I am. I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like being caught on a rod, being a fish caught on a rod, and you just take the hook out your mouth.
Exactly, spit it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And the hook's not pulling me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Vince. It's good to talk about these things, isn't it? And
Yeah, that
yeah.
well, I feel really hopeful with that. That's pretty exciting stuff, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the laughing thing, I don't care if it's the next day that you remember that you were lost in it, right? It still helps to change the beginning change in the brain, if you can do that. Even if you don't laugh, if you just acknowledge that you recognize that you were and now you're not.
Right.
And that you recognize that you're not, and that's what you're acknowledging, that recognition. That's where we'll change the brain pattern, the habitual brain pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I'll definitely watch for that, because it was very clear cut today, like waking up. It was literally like waking up. I'd come out of a dream, a conscious dream, and then I'd woken up into the present, and it's like all of that crap disappeared instantly.
Yeah. We don't know we were dreaming until we wake up, do we?
Yeah, exactly. I was totally in the dream, totally in the nightmare, but I was awake. It was a nightmare, but I was awake to it. You see what I mean? I wasn't asleep dreaming it. I was awake, and it was still a nightmare. Yeah, and then I woke up from that nightmare. Yeah.
And that's really what we're doing here. All of us are here to wake up from a dream. It may not be a nightmare dream, or it may be, but we're all here to wake up from that dream, and we'll just develop a much better dream, I think. It'll still be a dream, but a much better one. Yeah.
I think that's what gets me, because when I was in the honeymoon period, when I thought I'd woken up, it was always nice like that. And now sometimes it feels like it's getting worse, because I'm blipping back into how I felt before non-duality even.
Yeah. Now look, let me correct you here. You're not going back into that. It certainly has a familiar feel about it, but it's new. It's today's experience. It's not the way it was before. There'll be changes. I don't know what they are, but probably they'll be fairly subtle changes, but there will be changes. So we don't ever go back into the way it was. It's always today's version of it, even if it seems the same thing. It's just very, very similar, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to remember that, because my mind automatically says, here it is again, same old thing, never going to change. It's getting worse, getting worse. Yeah.
They're good stories, those ones, aren't they?
Oh, God, they are so hypnotically convincing.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. And they'll even enlist your feelings to verify them as being right.
Yeah.
Because you'll respond to the story and you'll go, see, it must be right. Look, I feel this,
Yeah. Crazy, it is crazy. So crazy. But thanks for that.
No worries. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm handing out a lot of pills tonight, but anyway.
Yeah. They're good pills, happy pills.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
It's kind of hard to get our mind around how we change, because we don't ever realize that we're constantly moving. Here we are, always going forward, and we just don't realize that. It seems like we're not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah, it never feels like we're going forward.
It's a big one.
The mind's always trying to convince us convince me that I'm going backward.
Yep. And
or
you
not moving.
think about that, contemplate on that one for a moment. How is it possible for you to go backwards? You can never undo some of your experiences you've had since the last time you were there. So it can't possibly be the same as when you were there before. It's got to be different because you've had different experiences. It's always got to be new. It's always new, but it doesn't stop. So you can't bottle it. It'll just keep on moving. It'll always be new, but it'll keep on being renewed. It just doesn't stop. Yeah.
When you say renewed, because it feels the same every time.
But that's
But
okay.
it's never the same every time.
But see, you say it feels the same, but what happens is that you don't actually investigate what it feels like. But as soon as you say it feels the same, you just got a label, the same. And so you do is you think about it and you tell yourself that it's the same as it was before, but you're not investigating it to know. And if you remember what it was like before to compare what this is like, then it can't possibly be even close to the same, you know, regardless of how good your memory is.
The only thing that's the same is the story about it.
Absolutely, yes. And the story, it's always the same. It's always the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the same thoughts.
Yep.
That are going to come along.
And if that thought is believed, then of course it feels like it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big one.
It is a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do these things all the time. You do these.
Yeah. 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 Thank you, Vince. Really useful. Thank you.
Have you been, Ramiz?
I feel so heavy that it takes more effort to talk even.
You'd rather not?
I don't mind, but it's just difficult.
Is it difficult to find words or difficult to speak the words or just difficult to do anything other than feel the heaviness or something else?
Sometimes I feel I don't know. I don't know if it's numbness. It's just, but it's different because I can feel it in my body. I can be with it. I'm not dissociating from it, but it feels numb somehow.
So just in the body, or does that does it extend to your thoughts, to your thinking as well?
Thinking seems slow. Um,
Right. So it's synchronized, your thinking is synchronized with your body.
yeah, it's easier to just dismiss thoughts.
Mm.
Um,
So that heavy feeling in the body, is that like a weight coming from above or a constriction? How would you describe the heaviness?
it's it feels dense, heavy. Um, Sometimes it feels static, and sometimes there is this little. If there's like a weather in the body, there's like lightning, like painful lightning happens in the shoulders area, especially.
Not nerves, not like nerve, you know, that feeling of electricity when a nerve gets pinched or moved. It's not like that. Or is it like that?
Maybe I don't know what it is. It feels like something, the electricity, something painful, like.
Yeah. Okay.
But it fades very fast. It's just. And there seems to be like waves in the throat area, and it is like there's layers of waves that are slow and waves that very fast, and they intertwine
Mm.
somehow.
And how long since this has been happening?
I can't remember how things. It's like it might as well be like forever, or I don't know.
So you can't remember back to a time when it wasn't there?
It's like it moves. It's not the same.
Okay.
But
So it changes in 24 hours. It can be there and not there, or just different.
different, but something always happening here.
Yeah. But it's always a feeling of oppression. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, feeling like something is holding me.
Mm.
Or I'm holding myself or something.
Yep. And what immediately comes to mind from me is remembering you say about stopping the anger from coming out.
I have dreams about anger. like explosive anger in dreams. Uh, in a way, I don't think I can embody that anger being awake.
Mm.
And even if I'm willing to, it's not here. It's not coming.
Yep, yep, yep. So it's mainly just present in your dreams, that anger.
Yeah.
So how do you express it in a dream? Do you destroy anything? Anybody?
No, I speak aggressively. I shout. I swear, and I become very nasty. Really,
Mm, mm.
it's like I want to hurt people's feelings.
Yes. Okay. Hurt people's feelings, right? Yes. So we don't have any worries that you're going to run around with a machete and do damage to people, but you're going to insult them. You're going to run around and hurt their feelings. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, even in your dreams, you're very controlled. Yeah. 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 Is it a cultural thing where you live that you don't express anger?
No, actually, one side of my family is very angry, and the other side is not
Okay.
too much angry. It's the combination. So I'm the result of that combination.
Yes, that's why you got both in you. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Mm.
Ramiz, when you, I don't know if this is how it is with you, but I had a lot of problems with expressing anger. In fact, I used to say I never get angry. I wasn't even in touch with it. But then when I saw the way it sort of came out, often actually in sarcastic speech, and things I couldn't prevent myself from, being sarcastic, and I don't know what the impulse was, just this contrariness that wanted to just somehow, be contrarian, have an opposite. But then I used to have a lashback of like feeling bad too. So it was like, on the one hand, there was an impulse to somehow disturb the peace there was a sort of angry impulse that I wanted to act on. And then there was the lashing back of the feeling bad about it. And it was sort of really interesting watching the development of that, because the lashback of, feeling bad about it and sad. And then I felt bad about it. And then there was something inside me that felt sad. And it was all about, this innate sort of desire to express some form of anger and frustration or irritation that I wanted to project on other people. And it was quite complex and quite interesting also to, I don't know, unpack it from all the, which is actually the primary action was noticing somehow that there was an aggressive burst of energy that wanted to come out and be projected on other people. And then the secondary burst was feeling bad about that. So I don't know if that relates. That's just my experience of how it was, and potentially, but not very, very often. I mean, potentially could still happen. I don't know if that relates at all.
Yeah, there's feeling bad about being angry, or just feeling resentment, or even if I didn't express it, like there's a sense of shame about it, like why did I feel this way?
The way I see it is, it's like it's like as a child, maybe there wasn't the understanding of how to be angry or whatever, and so there was this holding back of that energy, and that's still sort of a part of the mechanism, and that was playing in the subconsciously, and now little by little everything is starting to move up, and I think it's really embracing the bad side, you know, the side that was banished, because because there's so much, it's unmanaged, and the more it's seen and the sensations are recognized and felt, the more it just is sort of energy being integrated into the system that doesn't need to have labels. The labels start to dissolve, or they become less less powerful, or so it's just noticing and allowing it all to be the bad, the bad Rowena, you know, the nasty, mean, that side. And then laughing, because my little granddaughter, who was now 6, for the first 3 years of her life, there was an angry little being born, stuck in a body that was pretty unfunctional, you know. She was so angry, and she would, if I would see her, she would say, go away, and I just saw somehow that was her sensitivity to her sensitivity towards life and learning to manage the nervous system, which somehow she just wasn't one of these calm, lovely little happy babies. She was an angry little baby, and so I see that, and I see those sort of angry parts in myself or in other people, and I can see how that's just somehow there to be managed when one is older, because it couldn't possibly be managed from a young age, whether one had experiences to feed those sort of rather negative impulses about being alive in a body or not. They were just somehow there in the genetics or whatever.
I can relate to rather embarrassingly creating dramas as an excuse to let out emotions for years without knowing that I did it. You know, wind somebody up just so that when they responded, I could be angry. I mean, I couldn't have done it, you know, any differently because I couldn't see what I was doing. But I remember the whole cycle of it was always desperately uncomfortable. But there was just like this almost self-sabotage desperation for something to pop out, you know. And it's like how the only way to do it was to manipulate it. And I probably learned that very early to, you know, but it wasn't, it's only now that I can really understand it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating. I mean, I'm fascinated from the fact of reading or listening to the biologist and neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky, who has a book called Determined, which I've yet to read, but that everything comes from genetics. There is no free will. There is just, everything is just structuring and then responding to the outside world all the time. And of course, then there's the self structure that is created on top of that, which is part of the whole system. And it's a different way of looking at you know, what we're looking at, but it marries together because it's like there couldn't be any other way, you know, either manipulating or fully aggressing, either, you know, as Pernilla talks about, the aggressive or the passive aggressive or the chameleon. They're all just the way the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is really functioning in each individual. And then it's labeled good or bad, but it's from the outside. And so then the natural functioning never sort of really learns to adjust until, like you said, now. Crazy.
Yeah, my thing before was getting frustrated and then that turning into anger. And I can recognize that there was a good feeling about being really angry, about me going off, yelling and carrying on, right, and being really angry was a kind of a high. I did feel good about, you know, I felt bad about doing it. There was that guilt thing. But it was, yeah, it was kind of attractive to be that way. You know, it was so very alive or something. I don't know what it really was, you know. But see now, so I didn't have any inhibition about that. I mean, that happened to me on a daily basis or more than once a day before. And it still happens occasionally, but not very often now. But yeah, there was that good feeling with that, you know. Now, for me, there was a kind of a, I mean, this is a story I'm making up now, that I felt bad about the fact that I did it. I felt bad about that when I was yelling at my wife, you know, that I wasn't really yelling at her. I was just letting off steam or just my own frustration. But she took it personally and that felt bad, you know. For me, I felt a bit of guilt about that kind of thing, right? Now, so I was able to let it out. You know, Ramiz is not able to let it out. And Bianca, I think, can let it out without feeling guilty in the slightest. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, it was just I've been told once that when I came to a new group of people and someone said to me, it seemed like I wanted to make enemies with everyone. But somehow it ended well for me. And I also heard, God, you are so sarcastic. I love it. now I was thinking how I like Lindy because Lindy, you have this aura of experienced editor. I don't know what is your profession, but you know, I'm an editor, and my seniors had this exact expressions. Yes, experienced editors are scary. At first glance.
I think that's just because I look quite serious, and I'm probably, you know, I've been carrying around an aura of, you know, defense, probably,
Yeah.
and probably repressed anger, you know. But I'm hoping some of that might soften. We'll see. There's really nothing to be scared of here. I'm more scared, you know, as most people are, you know, more scared of everybody else, really. But yes, I have done some editing. Yes, but that's not my job. I am that way inclined.
Yeah, you look like a born editor.
Whatever that means. It's funny. Anyway, you've made me laugh, so that's the first time probably in a couple of days. So thank you, Bianca. I needed that. I need to lighten up more.
No, you don't. You're perfect. You're perfect the way you are.
Thank you.
And
Rowena.
Yes.
And no, but I tell you what. So this is something. This is part of the inquiry, and it was good. It's good for waking up. But anytime you can ask yourself, just take a moment of quiet. Probably not right now, but you can feel into it and say, okay, what's in the way of me not being lighthearted, for example, or peaceful and content? What is in the way? And you can just tap into that feeling tone that you carry. It's, I think Pernilla would talk about it as a starting point, but a feeling tone that's there, that is probably a little bit contracted, possibly has more of a serious tone to it, or yeah, because here there's you know, tendency, people would say, oh, you know, you should laugh and lighten up and don't take, and so I would say, what's in the way? And there was this sort of like block on it, and it just needs to be sat with. It's not the needing to be lighten up that everybody says, oh, you should be, people should be. And so if you're saying I should be, it's almost cruelty, I'm being exaggerating, of course, to what is really actually there as a feeling tone that needs to be felt.
As soon as you said that, Rowena, immediately I felt this huge weight here. And
Yeah.
that's not a feeling that that I was aware, I was familiar with. So that's today's work. Thank you.
Yeah.
And probably
Just
the next
gently,
few weeks, months and years.
little
But
by little. And don't expect it to go away. But
No.
but being with it, it's like, you know, it's one of your children, if you like, the way Anna always talks about it. And it's just giving it that little cuddle, and it will be soft, it'll become soft, and then sometimes there will be a lightness that appears, but no need for it. Just to be just with it as it is.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, and Lindy, even when you are in your, you know, stern defensive mode, I can see the warmth.
Thank you.
And I think it is a warmth that I appreciate, you know, it's not this gooey love, but more critical. I don't have good words. But
That's good enough for me. Thank you. Very sweet of you. Thank you. That means a lot, actually.
Yeah. That was a bit gooey, Bianca.
oh,
I love it. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of adopting a dog soon, and I think that will be very good for my softening up process, and yeah, a bit of mirroring, a bit of joy, a bit of playfulness. It's all a bit scary. I mean, I've had lots of dogs before, but it's been a while, so we'll see. So I might have a little doglet here with me before too long. Apparently needs a bit of training, so I think these meetings would be really good for it if it comes to pass.
Like dogs are great. Any animal is great, I think. Yeah, but dogs are particularly good. Yeah. Yeah.
What sort of dog?
Well, it's really funny because I've sort of I'm not going to tell too many people about it because it still may or may not happen, and it's almost like when you voice something, it's almost kind of solidifies it. Well, I've seen this sweet little poodle who's 7, and he seems to be lots of the attributes that are needed for my lifestyle. I mean, that sounds very selfish, but I know when you take on a dog, you need to be pretty clear that you're compatible with it if it's going to work out, really. But I just don't know. I mean, I can't do it for a couple of weeks, so somebody might come in and offer a home. They don't want you to say you're interested until you've got to be ready to have it within about a week, and I can't because of commitments at the moment. I'm very aware I've got to clear my diary really for a couple of weeks, so just to be with it and
Poodles,
settle it in and everything.
like poodles. We've got a Labradoodle, our dog, and the fact that they don't shed hair is a big thing. And yeah, their temperament is beautiful. They're just such a loving animal, very sensitive, loving animal.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've had a couple of poodles, and I think they're much maligned animals. Of course, like any dogs or any animals, you can get ones that haven't been treated right or not trained right. But I think if they haven't been too ruined by their owners, I think they're pretty nice personalities, really.
right. So it's not a full-size poodle.
No. The one we had in the past was a big one. This is like a miniature one of the black one. A friend of mine said, "Well, that looks just like your old gem." Squeezed down to I'm not sure it's a tall. I think it's a miniature, which means the middle size. I
The
think.
smaller ones live longer as well, so yeah, get a big
Yeah.
one enough to go.
Yeah, well, I don't want a very young one now. I'm getting older. It just feels, my last couple of dogs were sort of 17 and 18 when they died, and that just seems like a huge responsibility. I mean, I'd like to think I'm fit, healthy, and fairly fit, but anything can happen, and I think I would just rather not have another 17, 18-year commitment, really.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds good. How about you, Leonard? Have you been experiencing any anger in the last couple of weeks?
No, actually, yeah, I'm really enjoying my trip, and it's an experiment actually, because I didn't plan anything, and that's rather something that would stress me a bit usually. But I'm really enjoying it, and also there are a lot of moments that are rather unpleasant in the last days. but somehow I'm enjoying them as well because at some points, at some moments, I just said to myself, yeah, but it's an adventure, and adventures can't be always pleasant, you know. So yeah, I'm really relaxing into it. Although sometimes it's really yeah, not overwhelming, but kind of stressful, or also there were some situations that usually would really make me a bit scared as well. But yeah, that gives me the opportunity to really see what is just my negative imagination, and then there is always a way out of this rather unpleasant situation.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah. So you're somewhat in discovery mode.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like.
also because yesterday I did hike on a mountain, and I think it was not the best idea because it had rained before, so it was kind of slippery, and then there was something in me that wanted to see those spectacular views, but at the same time there was nobody else. So I was like kind of, ooh, and if it's starting to rain, and then I don't know how to get down again from this mountain, and then nobody knows that I went up. But then like after 2 hours I met the first people, and then it was quite okay. But um yeah, when after having come down from the mountain, there was like I just followed what Google Maps told me, and that's obviously not the best idea because then it sent me like on a path which was like totally grown over, and I stepped into the water, and there was like it was really like in a jungle with a lot of mosquitoes.
Yeah,
And in that situation, I actually thought, yeah, but it's not a forest in Germany, you know. I mean, I'm in Indonesia, and but then also I started to think about snakes or malaria or stuff
yeah.
like that. And actually, since then, I had to walk in soaking wet shoes because there is no I can't buy shoes in my size here because people don't have the same size as me. So that was also not that pleasant, like to walk around all the time in wet shoes. But yeah,
Yeah. Sounds like you are having an adventure.
yeah, I think so.
Mm.
But on the other hand, yeah, it kind of all is in a flow. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that sounds good to me. I like that. Yeah, that sounds like you're in a good place, and that's where you discover things. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think a year ago, maybe things would have really stressed me a lot. For
Mhm.
example, I went to a mountain village that I didn't know if there was any connection to go on to another place. And also then there was only one ATM and my card didn't work. So I was kind of out of money, and then I could really feel it in my stomach that I thought, okay, that's like quite a strong feeling about something like money, you know? I mean, somehow you will still kind of get to another place, but it's maybe a bit more complicated. But then also I experienced that people are very helpful, and for example, drivers just drive you to another city and you can pay afterwards. And so, yeah, but I actually noticed that there was an issue about having or not having money, you know? I mean, also maybe not that strange to feel that, but I could observe it, and in the situation when I was trying to get money out of the ATM, I was really a bit surprised about the intensity of this bodily sensation about I hope some money will come out of the ATM, and it's like, but I really could feel into it in that moment as well,
Yes.
and I could really see like, no, I mean that's a bit exaggerated. You will still find a way to get out of this situation, and then it was also like this. So I think this trip kind of yeah, it's kind of a long process that before I always had those negative expectations that were kind of already feeling like a reality. And then I kind of got more aware of it by also experience that it always turns out to be fine in the end. And then why will I always have those fantasies again and again and again, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that was only like on the intellectual level, but now I can really experience intuitively that it's not, that it's just a fantasy.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. I really like that you are aware that you're aware of what's going on. Yeah. That's
And then I always have to think of my cello. I do miss it a bit because what I learned also playing the cello is that whenever there is a part in the piece you play, which is the more complicated part, then I I used to have a contraction and then it would not work out and it would sound like shit. And then I kind of understood physically that whenever there is a part where it's more complicated, I even have to be more relaxed. And I
yes.
think that it was kind of the cello teaching me something about life because yeah, in the situations that are most difficult or seem most difficult, it requires even more relaxation, I think.
Yeah. Good one. Good one. Yeah.
But yeah, the strange thing that I noticed is that usually when everything's fine, I mean, in my normal reality, in my everyday life in Germany, I tend to create more problems in my head. And now that I'm like, I have to resolve all the time, like problems or situations because it's a different culture. I only speak some words of Indonesian, and then yeah, it's a totally different context. And when I'm within this situation, I don't really think that much. And that's kind of interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. Yeah. Yeah. Being in that different culture, it kind of puts you in the now. It puts you in the present in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just fall back on old habits. You have to think about it.
Yeah. It, of course, I was thinking like, what can I take from this with me back to Germany? Because then yeah, I mean, everything seems to be ordinary or some, but it's not either. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
but I would like to um, keep this curiosity for unpleasant situation. But I also have to say that sometimes, for example, when I was hiking, I did feel a bit scared, and I could also feel this in my body. And then I would start to talk to myself. And then I understood, okay, this is like a form of diverting, but actually I felt quite okay with it because I think I'm still in this process of, we talked about this today as well, about being gentle to myself. So it's rather a bit, a silly way of talking to myself. And then I usually tend to call myself darling and
Yeah,
I
sure.
just
And
something like
it's
that.
not silly at all. And this is a hard one. There's nothing wrong with diverting. Right? If you divert, then you divert.
Yeah, but I was
noticing it, that's even better. That's the next best thing. Yeah.
It helped me kind of because I noticed like the adrenaline rush in because one, I nearly slipped and then I thought like, oops, I have to be a bit more careful because there's nobody who could help me. And then I said to myself like, okay, darling, now you are a bit frightened, right? And then I sat down and allowed myself to my breath to come to a normal rhythm again. And then I said, yeah, it's good to be careful, but just look around you. There is beautiful nature and you want to enjoy that. And there's nothing wrong about being careful, but you don't have to panic, you know? So I don't know, maybe this could serve to the others as well, like calling yourself darling once in a while.
It's an instruction to have a certain attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it because it's rather playful. It's
and gentle. Yeah.
And it's not the same like, you again or something, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
but which I would do before a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Something like, you're so
I do.
stupid or something.
Thanks for that. I love that idea. I'm going to do that.
It's like that self-talk been so harsh all these years. Now, you know, like you really start to reparent yourself and you are becoming that loving and caring and compassion parent to yourself. I do a lot of this, darling, as well. That's why I smiled once you said that. And I never did that to myself. I always just, you know, that very, very harsh self-talk. Oh, Anna, oh, this, oh, something else, hurry up, all that. That's when I became aware of that self-talk. But I'm changing that into, you know, like, oh, my wee darling, look what you have done. That's okay, wee sweetheart. And just, you know, just like this. And it really changes because I can see when I'm applying that on myself, it passes on other people around me as well. Even strangers, you're more softer to them as well. So it's beautiful.
It's hard to appreciate how you can feel something and think you're keeping it to yourself, but you still affect the people around you. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing was like when I arrived to Indonesia, I had booked a hotel that in the internet looked like super lovely, but after this very long trip, I was super tired, and then I entered the room and it was like super dirty. I mean, the sheets were washed, but they had like spots, and it was like some parts of the sheet had really like, I think it was blood or something like this. And then I really wanted to lie down and sleep. And in the first moment, I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to cuddle into this bloody sheet or something. But in the end, yeah, I could also notice, okay, now you're imagining how this blood came to the sheet. And then I thought like, yeah, and if it was my own blood, I would not care at all, you know? So then somehow, and I didn't only stay one night, I stood 2 nights there. So in the end, I was kind of, I didn't really think about it anymore, but that was also something interesting.
It sounds like you're discovering a lot of things about yourself. Yeah, I like that.
Very courageous.
Yeah, different cultures can be quite a challenge, especially when you're
Yeah,
by yourself.
afterwards I noticed that some the advertisement of some hotels say spotless sheets. So obviously it's not such a common thing. I mean, but then I think anyway the sheets are washed. Just there are some spots left. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, it's a hard one. That we did an Airbnb for quite a few years, and it's amazing what would happen to the sheets. You'd have to change them fairly regularly.
So you were renting rooms in your house to
Yes. Yeah.
tourists? Uh-huh.
Yeah, we have a downstairs studio that we used for Airbnb. But now we have a permanent renter there, so that's a lot better. We don't have all that work that we did before. Mm. Mm.
I might share a little bit.
Yeah.
Something what I have noticed has shifted. Oh, I can't see this in glasses. So there was a lot of seeking and just like seeking and chasing something. Then that kind of settled, and there was like investigation into that, you know, like non-duality and all this. And once it started, like, you know, to have some glimpses into Feather 6, a lot of fear started to come up. So it changed all direction from non-duality into trauma. I was very, very deep dive into that. So now I see that soul is changing into looking into self again. But what I have noticed this morning, a very strange thing, I woke up and Todd released one new video. And he was doing that inquiry with that man. And I just followed that because there was like some humiliation triggered during the week. And so once I've done that, I was just like, oh, you actually don't need to split yourself. You're just doing one or you're just doing another. You can do, you know, like looking into this like non-dual awakening stuff. And same time, anything comes up, you know, like trauma related, it can be integrated. It's both like disintegration and integration, and process of both can be held in the present moment, whatever this is. This was very interesting because mine just normally goes, you either do this or do that, but not both. Yeah, and this like today, oh, so you can actually do both of them. It seemed like one time I remember there was something coming up, you know, like about my mom. And there was a lot, you know, like because she's not here anymore and this and that and all them good memories. And then something came up and a lot of hatred came up. And I remember mine was just like, but how are you going to love her now if you're hating her? So mine does that. It's either this or that, but you know, it doesn't realize you can actually hold both of them. You can love her and you can also express that negative, you know, that hatred, all this church. It doesn't mean you fully hate her, you don't love her anymore. That was like kind of interesting. You just see like how mind is opening itself for holding like both oppositions, yeah, without contradicting and just having this internal war all the time within itself. Yeah, it's just like, oh, okay, we can do this and also this. You can hold black and also white, and they are both okay. There is enough space for all that here.
Yes. So
Yeah.
only the mind that comes up and says that they can't both exist at the same time. So
Yeah.
as soon as we can get our head around that, we can hold paradoxes. Paradoxes are normal, you know. We can feel
Yeah.
the opposite. We can feel one way and the opposite at the same time. Yeah.
Mhm. And so one day, it was like interesting. I was walking with my friend, and I was you know, like sharing what I watched the video about, like but how body is healing itself, and like he's completely opposite. He's just like very like conservative medicine approach. So, and something got triggered in me. I was basically my childhood. Anyway, like, you know, like I got a bit heated, then settled down very quickly. And then I remember just like walking in the forest now, and I can see like this feeling of me. It's kind of becoming like washy, like it's very hard to differentiate where you begin, where you end. And it's just like, it's so hard to describe it. It's just like you become an air that feels everything, that type of way. Yeah. So I just like, oh, it's just like boundaries are like washing out, something like that. Anyway, we came home and just watching TV, and I can see that TV is just, you can't say it's getting enlarged, but it just feels like this, like, you know, like feeling all room again. So yesterday, a friend of mine, he says to me, just out of nowhere, like you're talking, he says to me, can you see you're actually looking from emptiness? My first thing, like, oh, no. And I was like, hold on. Oh my God, that's actually, yeah, it really is. Like, you really are looking from emptiness. But there, you know, like, you can say, you know, like, yeah, there is a body, and like I am in the body and all this, and it's me is looking from a body. But if you really look there without applying any thoughts, looking is just from emptiness. And when you look from that emptiness, it's always only this scene, only this visual field. There's nothing else, is there? And I was just like, oh my gosh. But I was just like, I was mind blowing. There's no shifts, nothing like this. But I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to comprehend this. And then, like, when when you just go into that and you look at, you can also see how this token is coming also from that same emptiness and like that hearing sound is happening in the same emptiness simultaneously when this token is happening. It's very interesting to see it that way. Even there is no any shift happening, no wows, anything like this. So yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, that is a shift. It may not have that feeling that says, but that realization is definitely from a different angle to before. So it is a shift. It just doesn't have that epiphany feel about it. But yeah. When you were talking, I was very excited that something that's been really difficult to share is how it's just so obvious that everything, including myself, only exists as a thing as thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if you take away the thought, then the existence of all of that is not, there is no space or there is no time. There's not, it's not, oh God, this sounds woo-woo-y. But the, for something to be at a distance, I have to think about it as at a distance. For something to have form, I have to think about it as having form.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's no distance and there's no form. It's only there because I make it there with my thoughts.
I can't see that no space, no time yet. I definitely can see how mind is creating time. That is very, very obvious, because without thinking, you can't make time.
That's right. Yeah.
Because any time, anything you think like time related, yesterday, tomorrow, what time is it, age, anything like this, it's it's thinking is engaged. Yeah, I can see this, but like no space thing, it hasn't collapsed yet. It's like still like very subject object perception.
Yeah. Okay.
And still me here.
But just watch how you create the subject object with thought. So you can kind of got to imagine to start with that without thought, how can it possibly be a subject and object? You just got to play with that idea. What without thought? It's like, and because you're saying without thought, it's like you're saying to the thoughts, keep a distance. I'm not going to engage with you. But you can recognize that to say, oh, it's out there, I have to say it's out there. If I'm not saying it's out there with my thoughts or my words, if I'm not saying it's out there, it's not out there. It's not in here either. It's just not, there is just nothing measurable.
It's like one day I remember I was walking and I just walked and like, there is no behind. There is obviously no behind. But then I was like, but then how's this in front come, like getting like seems like there is something in front. But yeah, if there is no behind, there shouldn't be in front either.
It's only because of what you think about what comes in through your eyes. The behind you, it's obvious that you have to imagine it. But because you've got your eyes involved, you don't realize you're imagining that as well.
It's like with, like looking from that emptiness, like there is this body which is seen, there some bodily sensations, like everything, you know, like what body feels, and then there is like automatically this thought get like overlaid. Oh, this is body, this is me, and all this. But without this, you know, like without the thinking, there is just like a body is the same, like a part of a visual field as everything, just a shape and a color, and like just some sensations being perceived in that emptiness. Yeah, it's interesting thing to look at it. And still there is very much, you know, like me and me and me, and you know, like every time it's me, I just like, where it actually is, you know, like where is it? Where's this me? Where's what it actually is this me?
Yeah, that's the difference between the label, you know, me, and what it actually is. And what it actually is, again, is just what I create with my mind.
Mhm.
The classic one is, how do you know you got a back of your head? Without touching it, how do you know it's there? You don't.
Yeah.
You would,
Yeah.
but mind tells you it is there, and we've got all this
Uh-huh.
really good logic that says, yes, I must have the back of my head, otherwise my brains would spill out.
Mhm.
But as far as experience is concerned, unless you touch it or do something with it to engage one of the senses, you have no idea that it's there. It's only thought that creates it.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
That's what I was, one day I was sitting there with eyes closed and I just thinking like this myself. If you were born with no limbs, which happens to some people, you know, no legs, no hands, no arms, so you never touched, you don't know your head is there. And if you're born, you know, like with no limbs and no vision, which also can happen, you never seen this picture. So technically you're just sitting there with some undescribable sensations and you don't know what that shape is. That's only because you have seen it, you have touched it, and you have this like a mental picture hold, you know, been held that in somewhere, I don't know where. I mean, you know, like it's just like overlay over the sensations. It's just like an overlay. Oh, that's like a round head is up there. But without thinking of it, like
Actually, I've read about a woman born without limbs. She still had phantom limbs. She had a sense of phantom. So it seems it's built in our programming from birth.
Yeah, you know, like technically when babe, you know, like embryo was development, like everything like technically like is programmed to them limbs to come up. And then in some, you know, like embryo developmental stage, they just don't grow as they should be. So yeah, like technically by nature they should be there. So mine just kind of makes them up where they didn't come out.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. See, with this finger, after that got cut off, I had phantom limb experiences. I used to get dirt under the fingernail on this finger. And the only way I could get rid of the sensation of dirt under the fingernail was to clean the fingernail on this hand. But I experienced the definite dirt under the fingernail, even though there was no fingernail there anymore. And the way I read about that, I understood that was that the parts of the brain that used to relate to the finger, it was still active, even though there was no finger there. Well, I haven't had a phantom limb experience for a long time, for years and years. I don't know, but if she was born with no limbs, how could that part of the brain be actually active to do that? Now that's an amazing thing, hey? That's
Isn't it?
Yeah. So that would almost be like she's experiencing genetic
Uh-huh.
limbs. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and the other part is people who don't have this, for example, phantom leg, although they had it, they have it in reality.
Mm.
They have a leg and it is functioning, but they feel like one of the patients said, it's like my soul doesn't extend into it.
Mm. Yeah. There's probably a name for that one. I think that's yeah.
It's called body dysphoria.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. Mm.
I also noticed the same thing what Anne mentioned, that seeking energy start to raise up again. But where it was very interesting, I noticed how that is coming up, and there is simultaneously was resistance to that. No, just not in that again. But then, because I've been listening so much, you just kind of remember, yeah, that's, like projection in the future, wanting something what is not existing here. It's just imagination and all that, and it's dropped. Thankfully, it's dropped. To go back into that, it's like a nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's exactly how it feels, Hannah. It's like going back into a nightmare. It's like, but that's all over. And I'd forgotten what it felt like. So for it to come back, what the hell is going on with that?
Yeah. I was also thinking just like, not again, not this, no.
Yeah, exactly.
But it occurs to me that you missed an opportunity there. And the thing
To
is,
look deeper.
you don't want those things to stop. You want to see why they've turned up.
What is missing? What mind is creating? What is missing?
What am I looking for? Yeah. What do I feel is not right, not good, whatever? Yeah. Yeah. See, we don't ever want to stop something from happening. What we want to do is see the reason why it's turned up.
Why is it coming up? Yeah. Like I did look, like what is it, what this is about. But it's, like wanting to know how it is. It's just, like if I just could step a wee bit into that non-dual and just feel a wee bit how it is, and then jump back again if I don't want it.
It's no joke. I've come across people who have said, "Oh, look, this is so bad. I just want to go back to sleep again." And I have to say to them, "Look, I'm sorry, but once you've got this started, you can't go backwards." But some people do, of course. Yeah.
Not easy. It's not the easy path. Definitely not. Because once you start digging into all this, it's like all that stuff coming up and what you have to face, what you've been avoiding all your life. It's definitely not easy. But at the same time, only way out of it is fully in.
Yep.
And when you go fully in, you face all your demons you've been avoiding. And because you've been avoiding them, that charge is so strong. So first time you facing them, it's like really just like, whoa, takes you completely, just suck you in. But like kind of more you adapt, like more resilience you build to be with that also loses its charge and it becomes like less. Like fears, like I don't know, might still comes as the strength, that was before, but it was just like coming and like completely just like holding that abdominal area so strong, just like a very, very like becoming like a stone, you know, like it's hard even to bend. Like I felt like I'm pregnant again, hard to bend forward. But recently, because there've been like a lot of release recently, and I can see it's like coming as like holding, but it's not near as strong. And it's also, you know, like even if that comes and is as strong, I'm still okay with that, because you've been through it and you know there's nothing really to run away from. So yeah, but to start to get into that, because it's like kicks you out, just like no, no, no.
Yeah, that's the big one,
Mhm.
isn't it? Yeah, once
Mhm.
you've kind of been there a little bit, you can realize that what you took to be really big survival stuff isn't at all like that. It just was the way it seemed at the time, you know? Yeah, that's the big
And
one.
mind has extremes that, you know, like a moment inertia. I just like boom, it's like running 1,000 miles per hour.
Yep.
And
And the biggest fear,
because
the strongest fear, is the one that never shows itself. It never defines itself. It always stays in the shadows. It's always hidden. It's the unknown that has
Mhm.
serious fear attached to it. And once we get to know it, well, it's just a finger puppet. It's nothing, you know. It's a shadow on the
Mhm.
wall. But before we get there, it's the biggest monster that could ever exist. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting with all this. Like, it feels, you know, like at the beginning, it feels like it's like emotions. Then you start to unpack all these labels and sensations and all this. And then you see, like, apart from sensations, there is nothing else is there, you know, just like some kind of sensations and movement of them sensations. And that's all what there is. And when you just sit with that, like, that's all there is and nothing else, and you're okay with that. But yeah, to get there, that is
Yeah.
tricky part.
Get in there. That's it. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
And still mind comes up with that, you know, like starting, you know, to create story and, you know, like labels and all this, and you just see that and I'm like, oh, but that is just a sensation, just a sensation. It's like you need to talk to yourself.
Yeah. Well, you do. Yeah.
Um, Today I remembered something which I found like super interesting. When I was still in Argentina, I had to be a student to get a student visa. So I studied a bit of philosophy, and I had to write a thesis on old Greek uh, culture. And I chose a subject that was about how in the oldest text of Greek antiquity the self was experienced, probably, or well, they analyzed those texts. And for example, in the Odyssey, there is not even a word for a body. So apparently, they didn't have any notion for their own body. And mm, there was no ego, no self, no sense of a biography. And the funny thing was that, for example, they believed when they got angry, that this was like a power sent into their body by the god of the sea, Neptune. So I thought, wow, okay, we have our conditioning with psychoanalysis and everything like that. But back then, people didn't really have those concepts, and they were not thinking that they are responsible for their emotions or their anger, for example.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. You go around the world in different cultures, particularly a lot of indigenous cultures, and their languages will reflect a whole lot of the way they see themselves. Yeah. And it kind of highlights how the habits that we've got into, and how common here we are, all these different nationalities, and yet we can all speak this English language, and get a fairly good idea of what we're talking about. But of course, it's a very superficial level, isn't it? When we're talking and discussing things.
Yeah, sometimes it also happens still to me that I have those gray days that it feels like, yeah, muddy or cloudy. But then I think the comparison to a cloudy sky, I mean, when I came back to Germany, I experienced autumn and winter again, which can be like 2 weeks of gray sky, and then somehow you can't even imagine anymore that there is a sun. But you know, if you would take a plane and
Yeah.
you would see that above these gray clouds, there is actually all the time the sun. And then sometimes when it happens to me that that I have a shitty day where it's just uncomfortable and it won't change, then I just think of the weather that also that it doesn't have any real reason as well, you know? I mean, it's just the weather.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would like to think sometimes that that yeah, I don't have to think about why I feel that shitty again, but I could maybe think, oh, just there's just some god, an ancient Greek god who sent to me this energy, and that's it. I mean, both are stories, and it's kind of arbitrary, you know.
Well, something about what you said is an important issue, I think, and that is that we have to, how can I put it, tap into our intuition to see that what we're feeling is just something that turned up, or whether it warrants some investigation. You know, we don't have to investigate everything. There are things that come, and we can say, and certainly something I experience is that certain things will turn up, and all it takes is a look at it to go, it's just a remnant. It's just an old habit that's come up. It's not resting on anything viable. It's I don't need to do anything with it. The fact that I saw it turn up is all that it takes for it to dissipate. And that's not that that's bypassing. It's not that that's suppressing it again. It's just that it really isn't. It really hasn't got any juice in it. It's just a habitual thing that turned up.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that you should bypass those feelings. I mean, it's just that I did like 2 psychotherapies, and at the time I did it, it was really helpful for me. But anyway, those patterns of negative thoughts or feelings wouldn't change, you know? So and in the end, I found myself like I could go on forever doing psychotherapies, but it won't change those habits in the end. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, some therapists aren't good at keeping you facing what you need to face, and some of them actually will aid you in bypassing. They'll think that it's a bit success if they can help you to suppress or deny stuff that goes on. So it depends very much on the therapists themselves how much value there is for you. Yeah. Okay, well, it's just coming up midnight here, and I've got to get up at 5:30 in the morning, so I'll We'll wind up, eh? Thank you all.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Yep.
soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a nice Sunday.
Really
Yep.
lovely
Bye-bye.
shares. Thank you. Bye.